We have been speaking a lot about IoT, and we were part of a very interesting and wonderful IoT symposium this Monday, together with our friends at Telia. And there, I'd like to invite Stephanie Hoof back up to give us an IoT download.
Great, thanks, Ola.
Stage is yours.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Ola. It's fantastic to be here at Sime today. And I'm representing Telia's Division X today, and we're part of the huge big Telia family, but we're 1 year old, and our mission is to innovate and scale new businesses to build on top of Telia. And our number one bet right now is IoT. But before I talk about where we're at today and what happened this week, let's cast our eyes back to 2009. Now, was this a big year for anybody here? Is this maybe a year that you got married or moved countries, started a business? Well, let's have a look at what happened in 2009. We were in the middle of the global financial crisis. It hit some people a bit hard. A bit cheaper to buy a house here back then, I think. We were fighting off swine flu. Michael Jackson was taken too soon. And there was a rumor circulating that Apple maybe would release a tablet computer. Imagine that. Now, back in 2009, I was working in my hometown, actually, in Melbourne, Australia. And the newly appointed CEO of Ericsson, who I was working for back then, was taking the stage in Paris at the Broadband World Forum. And there he was declaring that we are, in fact, in the fifth technological revolution. And everybody would be disrupted. Health, education, transport, logistics, you name it. It was going to be huge. And in fact, that we would see a world of 50 billion connections. Now, this is September 2009, and the news travelled pretty fast from Sweden back to Australia. And within minutes, the communications minister's office was on the phone. What is this going to mean for us? This is huge. I mean, how do we prepare for this? What do we do to get all our industries ready for this tsunami of transformation that's about to come? And how much spectrum are the telecom operators going to ask for to make this happen? So we were busy for quite a while trying to unpack all of this. This was a pretty bold prediction. But if we fast forward a bit and see what's happened since then, well, IoT has been riding that hype cycle. 2011, it made it onto the Gartner hype cycle, and it's been progressively moving up since. Almost at the top in 2014, and interestingly, we also saw in 2014 that quantified self made its way onto the hype cycle as well. One for you perhaps, Hannes and Chris. And then it peaked. And now we're starting to see that IoT platforms are on the way up. And it might interest you to know that in 2016, already more than 450 vendors claim to have a commercial IoT platform on the market. That's pretty big. But while the whole world has been hyping IoT, and we've had our connected salt shakers and whatever else, here in the Nordics, we've been getting down to business. We are one of the most connected regions in the world already. We are certainly punching above our weight when it comes to the number of connected devices we have per capita. And what's interesting, particularly when you're sitting on the telecom side, is that increasingly, or more than anywhere else in the world, in fact, this IoT is happening on top of the mobile networks, more than elsewhere. And we're starting to see that the biggest value is actually going to come from these IoT ecosystems. And Monday this week, as Ola just mentioned, Telia held its 6th IoT symposium here in Stockholm. So let's have a quick look.
It's fantastic to be an old dragon like Telia. We're big, we're powerful, we have fantastic resources and tons of knowledge. But we also recognized that we need speed, agility, and that fearless attitude of a startup sometimes.
It took about 100 to 150 years before we actually discovered that we had customers.
IoT will never happen unless we collaborate and build ecosystems. Ecosystems may be the top challenge our customers are facing in the world right now, to understand what ecosystems they need to be in, how you move into these ecosystems and how you stay there, how you create value, how you add value.
And this is the idea of start by starting. Don't start by debating what might be better. Start by trying something that you have a good hypothesis on and just experiencing something different.
Together with you guys, it's going to be fantastic. It's going to get us in a room together with a bunch of IoT, I could say nerds, but I'll say IoT people.
It's not about being something different for us. It's about being something more.
And this year, the 6th time we've had the symposium, a few new themes are starting to rise to the surface. And you saw some of that in the clip just now. It's great to discover that you have customers, and of course it's even better to make sure that you put needs ahead of technology. And that should go without saying, but I've worked in tech for more than 20 years now, and we've been known to be guilty of inventing cool stuff and then trying to figure out if anyone can make use of it. So it's quite refreshing, in fact, when we start to see that now in IoT, it's much more grounded in what am I trying to achieve for my customer? What is the pain or gain I'm trying to solve? And when we asked our delegates on Monday, who's actually driving IoT today? Because it had very much been a tech-driven discussion from the IT departments for the last few years. We're starting to see quite a shift. Most of the IoT projects now, in fact, are sponsored from the business line. IT is looking a little bit lonely there. And in fact, a large proportion of these projects actually have multiple sponsors across the business. And that's when we know that it's really starting to become, go into the core of the business. A great example that Nokia shared with us on Monday, which was quite interesting, was looking at the situation of a soft drink distributor. And they wanted to build the business and understand what was happening in the soft drinks in the retail stores. And the most obvious thing to do could have been to just whack a bunch of sensors into the refrigerator, and there you'd understand your stock levels, the quality, things like that. But they dug a bit deeper and they looked at different ways that they could really look at what the marketing department needed. And what they ended up doing actually was putting in a camera. So rather than lots of sensors on all the shelves, they put in one camera that looked down inside the fridge. And using video analytics, what they could do is they could understand by the condensation on the door what the temperature was in the fridge. And of course they could see the movement of the stock, what's being taken in and out. But what was really interesting, and if you imagine, now work with me here. So I'm opening up the fridge, and maybe you can do this with me. You're opening your fridge, and then put out your hand to grab the bottle. Now look at the hand of the person sitting next to you. If you're a camera looking at this hand, I can start to tell maybe what gender, a bit about age, and possibly even race. Now that information about who is reaching for that bottle of legal Coke is unbelievably rich for marketeers. The other thing that we're seeing is that IoT absolutely is a team sport. You can go it alone, and maybe about 18% of companies that we polled are trying to do it all by themselves. But the majority have 2 or more partners that they have involved. And as you heard in the video from Jan Abramson, everybody's talking ecosystems, feeling the pressure to be in one, which one, how do I start, what role do I play? Let's look at an example of an ecosystem that Telia actually started last year when we launched Telia Sense. Does anybody here have a Telia Sense in their car? Yes, we have a few waving vigorously, fantastic. Now, to start with, is in fact a partner solution. This is developed by Springworks, a local Stockholm scale-up. So it's not developed by Telia. And once you plug it into your car in about the 30 seconds that takes, immediately your car becomes smarter and you get great functionality. But that's not where the true value really comes. The value comes from the digital ecosystem. And if you look at the logos up here, some of these companies maybe aren't so digital at all, actually. And if you had asked Viking a few years ago, would they see themselves as a key contributor in a digital ecosystem? Probably they would say no. But most of us are in a smartphone generation. So when we book our taxi or our Uber and you watch the car relentlessly to see if the driver knows where they're going, it's the same thing when you want roadside assistance. So you want to be able to access these things through an app. And for Viking, it's really interesting for them because now they can acquire customers in a very new way. But then they also know exactly where your car is. So you're not waiting, in the rain at the side of the freeway for so long. But they also get data from the car, so they also know what problem they're coming to fix. And this really illustrates that the value in these ecosystems is in fact quite local, and you don't have to necessarily be a digital native to start. And the last theme I would mention is what was mentioned by Aaron Dignan on the video before. Start by starting. If we go back to 2009, this did feel huge. Everybody was raring to go. We thought that we had to do these huge, big projects and drive a big transformation. But most companies, in fact, have started small. And they start with their first case and they build on top of that. And the conversation back then was, well, we want to start, but the technology isn't quite ready. Now the conversation has shifted quite a lot. And I think this is a theme that you're picking up during this summit as well. When we polled our audience and said, what is the biggest challenge you're facing now in your IoT projects? It was culture, people, organisation. The technology, we've pretty much taken care of that. And why is it people, culture and organisation? Well, that's because IoT is in fact a business transformation that is powered by technology. And a customer I was talking to this week from a very traditional industry here in Sweden has an amazing case to connect their products. But what this will mean for them, for the first time in 100 years, their R&D department is going to have to trust and team with a partner. That's really confronting. And when you go into these IoT business models, you go from closed systems to open systems. You're testing and exploring business models together. So it changes roles, it changes KPIs, you might be facing different regulations. It can get messy. And everybody's journey is going to be unique. Where you start probably is not where you end up. But you just have to start. Change is never easy. And why? Because we know that IoT is on the top agenda of virtually every company. So if you don't start, somebody else will. And certainly it's much better to be disrupting yourself than having somebody else do it for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.